In 1914, America stood on the sidelines. The war raging across Europe seemed like someone else's problem. But just 4 years later, the United States had become richer, more powerful, and more influential than ever before. Factories ran around the clock. Millions of jobs were created. The government gained new powers. And America's role in the world changed forever. So how did a war fought thousands of miles away transform the United States so quickly? The answer isn't just about battles. It's about how one global conflict reshaped an entire nation. When World War I began in the summer of 1914, most Americans wanted nothing to do with it. President Woodrow Wilson declared that the United States would remain neutral, and for nearly 3 years that policy held. To many people, the conflict was a European tragedy separated from America by the Atlantic Ocean. But even while America stayed out of the fighting, it couldn't stay out of the business. European countries suddenly needed enormous amounts of food, steel, coal, cotton, ammunition, and machinery. American farms and factories rushed to meet the demand. Industrial production surged as businesses hired millions of new workers to keep up with wartime orders. The economy expanded at an extraordinary pace. Banks issued massive loans to allied nations, while American companies earned record profits, supplying everything from wheat to rifles. Cities grew rapidly as workers moved from rural communities to industrial centers in search of better-paying jobs. Without firing a single shot, the United States was already becoming one of the biggest winners of the war. But everything changed in 1917. Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking ships in the Atlantic, including vessels carrying Americans. Then came the Zimmermann telegram, a secret message in which Germany proposed an alliance with Mexico if the United States entered the war against them. When the telegram became public, outrage spread across In April 1917, President Wilson asked Congress for a declaration of war, arguing that the world must be made safe for democracy. America was officially entering World War I. The challenge was enormous. At the time, the U.S. Army was relatively small compared to Europe's massive forces. The government quickly introduced the Selective Service Act, drafting millions of young men into military service. Training camps appeared across the country almost overnight, transforming civilians into soldiers. Meanwhile, American industry shifted into wartime production on an unprecedented scale. Automobile factories built military trucks. Steel mills increased production. Shipyards launched new cargo vessels. Women entered factories in record numbers, filling jobs left by men who had gone overseas. Their contributions proved that they could perform many of the same industrial roles as men, strengthening the growing movement for women's rights. Just a few years later, American women gained the right to vote with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. The war also accelerated another major change. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans left the rural South during what became known as the Great Migration. They moved north to work in booming factories, changing the demographics of American cities and laying the foundation for major cultural movements in the decades that followed. But not every change was positive. The federal government dramatically expanded its authority during the war. Agencies regulated industries, controlled railroads, and coordinated production. At the same time, new laws such as the Espionage Act and Sedition Act limited criticism of the government and the war effort. Many Americans discovered that national emergencies could lead to restrictions on civil liberties. The war ended in November 1918 after more than 4 years of devastating fighting. Although the United States had entered relatively late, its fresh troops, industrial strength, and financial resources played an important role in tipping the balance in favor of the Allies. When the guns finally fell silent, the world looked very different. Much of Europe was economically exhausted. Old empires had collapsed. Britain and France owed enormous debts. The United States, by contrast, had emerged stronger than ever. New York was replacing London as the world's financial center. American businesses were expanding globally. The country's economy had become one of the most powerful on Earth, and its military had proven it could project force across the Atlantic. The United States could no longer think of itself as a nation isolated from world affairs. Whether Americans wanted it or not, global events would now shape their future. The changes didn't happen in a single day, but compared with the nation's previous history, the transformation was remarkably fast. In just a few years, World War I accelerated economic growth, reshaped society, expanded federal power, strengthened the military, and elevated the United States to a position of global influence. It wasn't simply that America helped change the outcome of the war. The war changed America, and perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. History isn't only written on distant battlefields. Sometimes, the most profound victories and losses happen at home. The America that entered World War I in 1917 was not the same America that emerged in 1918. In many ways, the modern United States was born in those turbulent years, and the echoes of that transformation can still be felt today.